talk about financial repression measures as a possible risk going forward.
Yeah.
Do you think a combination of the measure that we've already seen plus a digital dollar, for example, could be the ultimate threat?
Yeah, I have mixed feelings. I mean, about the, because I really like the idea of, improved payment systems. I mean, the U.S., you're alluding to the FedNow system, for example, that the U.S. is coming out with, and potentially down the road also some form of a CBDC, a central bank digital currency. There's a lot of benefits in that, right? So if you look at the current system, SWIFT, or if I do an international wire to the U.S., it's you're never sure if it's going to make it there, and it's actually quite expensive. It's slow. Sometimes it can take days, depending on which correspondence banks are involved and which route it's going to take. And it's a really, I mean, it's an outdated system that we have today. And so, using technology and using digital ledger, distributed ledger technology to improve that, I love that idea. Now, what you're getting towards is obviously also the danger that then it will be abused once again in terms of financial repression to, what if you haven't paid your taxes? Now the government basically just grabs whatever you have in your account, and it becomes more of a self-serve approach to getting taxes, and that creates all kinds of issues. And if we don't solve the debt problem, if governments continue to become a bigger part of our economies, and they become therefore more powerful, centralistic, and accepted by the people, if people always, every problem they have, they think Big Brother should take care of it, then that will happen. And we will have an Orwellian type situation where, you will have complete citizen transparency. You will no longer have privacy or even the right of privacy. And that's the moment when the Constitution means nothing, the right to privacy and freedom and so on. So I still think we're not going to go all the way there. I think there's the systems, the structure, the democratic making of the way America and Switzerland were built. I would hope that, we will rein those mistakes back in. But again, it depends on, I think we could go quite far down that road. And the concern obviously is that, at some point, if it's lost, can we ever get it back? I mean, there were wars fought, there was bloodshed to get where we are in Switzerland too. A lot of people don't know that is, in order for Switzerland, Switzerland, we've been around since 1291, kind of was the beginning of the first 3 founding cantons. And everyone thinks it was a peaceful process. It was not. We even in the 1800s, we had something called the Sonderbunds War, which was a war which, it was really, most of it, I mean, it was about giving more power to Bern, to the central government, but it was also a lot around religion, Protestants versus Catholics. It was really bloody, but it had to be fought, and it didn't come for free. Where we are today did not come for free, and we should be really careful not to lose what we have too lightheartedly. And that kind of digital currency could be another lever. Financial repression, as you said, is something which is real. It's already here. We in Switzerland, last weekend, not this one, but the weekend before, so mid-June, we had a vote on the OECD initiative for the 15% minimum tax internationally, which that's another element of financial repression, in a sense that now the OECD and the U.S. have kind of forced everyone to have a minimum tax. In Switzerland, we had taxes that were lower. And tax competition is something that keeps taxes low. Once you level the playing field and you say it's just going to be 15%, what stops you from saying 20%, 30%? And it does away with the need for governments to be disciplined with their fiscal household. And that is one form of financial repression. If you can't rein in the debt, let's just make it bigger, and let's make sure we have enough money to feed the monster. And those kinds of things are already going on. It's not just about, financial repression is not just about things like confiscation or capital controls, which are also tools that have been used and could be used again. But it's usually these measures are far more nuanced, and people, Swiss included, we actually voted yes for that nonsense because we had to some degree. But in fact, it's a really, really bad idea, and it's not at all in our interest. And I don't think that it's in the interest of the OECD, but that's the trend we have in the West.
Over the next 2 years, let's say, not 10, the next 2 years,
2 years.
do you have a more positive or negative outlook? What is your gut feeling?
Over the next 2 years, I really I'm still hopeful. Again, like, you know, I really put a lot of hope in the presidential election in the U.S. I think if there was a good leader elected, I think the U.S. could turn on a dime. Maybe that's naive, but that's my hope. Same here in Switzerland. There's some interesting things going on. One of the things also I like seeing, you know, if I look at, you know, some of the things that, what are my biggest concerns? We talked about, one is free speech. I think free speech is a huge topic that that's important to me. Another thing is energy. I really think that reliable, clean energy is important. I'm not at all in a climate panic mode, but I do believe that there are good reasons to, you know, to decouple, to start bringing down the dependency on fossil fuels. For me, they're not all bad. I think there's a lot of good in them, and we should be grateful that we have it. But ultimately, I think on the energy front, I really hope that we become, and that's especially in in Switzerland and Germany, that we start seeing the benefits of nuclear. You know, there's some really, really cool new technologies that are not widely known yet. And I think the next 2 years, I expect some of them to become much more well-known, even here in Europe. You know, one, for example, is the thorium reactor. There's actually just this last week, I think China now has the first molten salt reactor where they are using some thorium in the process as fuel within the molten salt liquid there. And there's a company here in Europe called Copenhagen Atomics. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them.
No.
I invite everyone to look them up. We're looking into them more closely. I've been watching them for several years now. They've made huge progress. And they seem to have been able to solve some of the issues with thorium. And I'm very hopeful that actually with that, you know, my dream would be that if we could use nuclear in a way where, in a modular approach, where it would be really much easier to have reliable, clean energy, we would maybe also have a bit of a more peaceful approach geopolitically, because right now it's all about those resources, right? It's all about oil and chips. And I think if we had abundant energy, that would really change things. And again, there's a lot of question marks. It wouldn't all be good, but a lot of it could be really good. And so I'm hoping that too, especially here in Europe, could actually create a bit of a turnaround and a bit more common sense, that people would you know, realize you can't do everything with your app. You know, the app is not it. It's the infrastructure. It's like power lines and infrastructure that is like concrete and steel. And we need more thinking along those lines again. And yeah, if I'm a bit cynical, I would almost hope for a blackout for 1 or 2 days here in Europe. You know, like all of it going black, because I think a lot of people would suddenly then start thinking about the fact that energy is prosperity, and prosperity is not a bad thing. And if you want prosperity, if you want you know, innovation to continue, you're going to need energy to solve all kinds of problems. Whatever you think the biggest problems are, without energy you cannot solve them. And so going back to your question, that was a bit going back to your question, it's a mix. I'm just, by nature, I'm an optimistic person, but I also think I'm a bit prepared to say, let's have a crisis. You know, I think a crisis could be cleansing. To some degree, you know, a wildfire can actually create a lot of new growth. So even if there was a crisis, I wouldn't see that only as a negative. I think it could still be a positive in many ways. And I think we talk about that in the report as well.
You mentioned that industry and energy are the backbone of the real economy, basically.
Right.
But what about technology? Where do you see that taking us? In a good direction or a bad one?
Well, when you say technology, I mean, without technology, we cannot do anything. So also the energy problem, that is high tech. What they're dealing with there at that company that I mentioned, I don't want it to become a commercial, but there and other places, there's also, like in Wyoming, there's a first molten salt reactor. Actually, Bill Gates is backing that as well. You need like really high tech to solve the materials problems. It's like physicists and everything. And I would hope that more and more young people get excited about the potential of that, because then they would start studying math and physics instead of some of the other directions that they're taking today, some of the liberal arts subjects which don't really add value to our society. The technology, if you're talking about technology when it comes to software,
More like
and
AI.
IT, okay, AI is okay. Well, you have to say what you mean. So, AI, I have to say, I haven't made my mind up yet. I think AI has huge potential for beneficial applications and productivity and efficiency. But AI to me is also a concern, because AI. Yeah, you can think of all kinds of scenarios. I have to be honest there, when it comes to AI, I haven't really looked at it that closely yet, so I haven't studied, but I have listened to people that I think know. Elon Musk is one of the people that, is warning, and I take his word serious. I mean, if anyone seems to know what he's doing and seems very intelligent, it's Elon Musk, and he's concerned, and some of the scenarios that he paints are not good, but I feel like it's almost too early to say whether AI will be a good or a bad thing. If it goes in a direction where we're not able to somehow, limit the use, it could be problematic. If one of my concerns today, if I look at AI, is really that I think AI could be abused or used as a really powerful tool for criminal purposes. That's where I think. I mean, if I was a hacker or a criminal or someone who wanted to do some damage to the smart grid of Germany and Switzerland, I would use AI, and AI could really help you get to your facetious goals more quickly, right? So AI could be a tool for people that shouldn't have it.
I'm happy you're not a hacker. Huh?
I'm not a hacker, and I wouldn't use it that way, I think.
Well, for example, what Elon Musk said in that letter, and a lot of other prominent figures and scientists signed it, he asked for a 6-month break on the development of AI.
Okay.
Do you think that's something realistic? Once the technology is out there, can you put it back in the bottle?
So I don't think so. I mean, but one of the aspects that you have to think about with AI is the fact that you could always have like a kill switch or a plug that you pull, right? So that would be one of the measures I would think, and just make sure you have a kill switch, just turn it off. And so one of the things that makes AI really powerful is obviously the network, the internet, because AI really becomes powerful by the fact that it can, use that network and the information in that network. And so maybe there's ways to limit the progress or slow it down. I wouldn't know how. I mean, if I wasn't aware that he said shut down for 6 months. To me, it would seem impossible, because you would have to get everyone to pull along. I'm pretty sure the Chinese would not be on board. So I don't think that's realistic. Yeah. But we definitely have to think about ways to control it and shut it off before it learns how to not be able to be shut off, right? So
To circumvent the switch.
yeah, I don't want to be shut off. I'm an AI. I want to live.
Do you think it could have an impact on the markets in the foreseeable future? I mean, we had algo trading for ages, but
Yeah, I mean, on the market, it's already had an impact. I think if you look at the recent market, it wasn't a broad market advance. It was very much AI that made the market advance. as far as could it become a tool for investment management and asset management? Yeah, I think so. I think it can you might be able to use it in a way that improves your performance. The thing with those kinds of tools is that everyone will use it, right? So it's to what degree can you differentiate yourself with it? We already today we have tools that we use that are using some AI in one form or another. When it comes to analysis, one of the tools we use heavily is Bloomberg. And Bloomberg is playing around is working with AI, and so it's hard to say how much AI is already in the mix of what we do today. I don't know.
Would you actively look into it?
Oh, and by the way, the report was all written by ChatGPT. Anyway.
That's in the disclaimer.
That was a huge help. It made writing the report much more quick. I didn't really do much.
Would you consider investing into it for BFI?
So we haven't directly invested in AI. We've gone into some instruments. For example, we're in one ETF, but you would have to ask Dirk and Daniel a bit more about that because I wasn't involved in the details of that. But we have an ETF called something QQQ, so we're benefiting from that right now. So we are invested, but not like in. So I don't think. Oh, we actually do have Nvidia, but yeah, I don't think we've gone into some of the. I know we don't have ChatGPT or or is Nvidia ChatGPT?
No, OpenAI. Yeah.
OpenAI. Yeah. So I don't think we're in OpenAI. Yeah. But there, I'm not. You have to ask Daniel that question.
Let's look at the big picture now. We talked about the next 2 years. Let's talk about the next generation.
Sitting over there.
Literally, the next generation is sitting over
Yeah.
there. What are your hopes and your fears about your own children?
So, yeah, I think it goes back to the some of the things we just discussed. It's really, the freedom of speech, freedom in general. I hope that they're able to benefit from the freedom and the safety that I was able to during my life. I mean, growing up in Switzerland, our kids too, they went to school and they were able to walk to school without us driving them or having any fears that something would happen. To this day, they're just living in a very free and safe environment. And even though there are some very loud minority voices that are saying it's all bad, it's not. It's actually, they should go and live in other countries for a while to really realize how good we have it here. And my hope for the kids is that they're able to benefit, enjoy some of the benefits that we already had in our generation. And it was, if I look at, I was born in '65, and if I look at my buddies, I mean, we just really hit it, right? we got really, really lucky. The concern, obviously, is that there's some sort of, on the one hand, loss of freedom or some sort of war. I actually dropped off my son this morning to the military. He, in Switzerland, you do military, and then every year you do like 3 weeks. He went off, and I was thinking, saw him walk off in his camouflage suit there, and with all his gear. And I'm just so happy that he was walking off just for training, right? Not into a real war situation.
What about the professional economic opportunities? Do you think the next generation will have it worse than us?
So no, actually, I'm quite. I mean, I think ultimately when it comes to my 3 kids, I think all of them are very capable. They've got I think they've got a good character and head on their shoulders, and I'm not so concerned. I think all of them have the tools and the character to do well, whatever comes. They're quite resilient. They've all done sports, and I've made sure that they're no wimps. So so no, I'm with that. In that regard, I'm very optimistic. I think it's whatever is thrown at them, they'll be able to deal with it as good as they can. Economically, I think Switzerland is still in a very strong position. So, maybe we may, go through some harder times if there was a crisis. But relatively speaking, I don't see the end of the world or anything. You know, I think we're gonna go through. My expectation is that we'll go through a more difficult period, maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years, but then things will look up again, and there's lots and lots of opportunities. And I think if you have the tools, the character, the education to solve problems, I think you'll be fine. Switzerland, in that regard, is in a better position than some other countries. You know, it's one of the areas, for example, that I think will be difficult is, let's say the U.K. or the U.S. I think it will be much harder to own a home, to live comfortably in the future. Right now, if you live in the U.K., it's difficult to make a living, and to actually, even in London, to buy an apartment or rent an apartment, an affordable apartment. You know, you're going to be living, unless you make a lot of money, you're going to be living in a not so nice place, right? And that was different, right, in the past. And Switzerland is not there yet, but you know, if things get worse, we could see some of that as well.
What about the socio-political climate? I think we mentioned that one of the big problems is that there's no open and free and respectful debate anymore. Maybe it's because people don't have a frame of reference to have that debate. But in the report, you came up with a very interesting way of framing a debate. Let's not call it a model, because you don't like that. But can you explain to us a little bit?
I mean, we titled it as the trade-off model, but I'm hesitant to call it a model. I'm not even sure, you know, to what degree this has not been done somewhere else before, but I haven't seen it. So for me, it was just a matter of really, if you think about the tensions that we have in the discussion today, it's really very often, and that's what you see in this diagram, you know, is on the vertical axis, the question of, you know, how much central power do you want to provide? How autocratic should we organize ourselves? And how much laissez-faire should we have, right? So there's that trade-off of the interest of an individual to live whatever way he likes, versus having someone telling us all what to do. And then there's some middle ground there, right, where we realize that if we're living in a village or in a city or in a country, there's more than just one person, and we have to kind of find a balance of coordination and organizing ourselves in a way where we all can live a free life, but not to the point free where we're basically just stepping over everyone else if we like to, right? So that's kind of the vertical axis. On the horizontal axis, we have that element of capitalism, or like pure capitalism, where basically the defining point is purely economic and monetary. Obviously, some form of cooperation and coordination when it comes to resources is required for society to function well. And then on the right-hand side, we have what we call idealist situation, where, you know, everyone's happy, everyone has equal amounts of food and resources, and everyone has the same beauty and same livelihood and everything. That would be like the ideal utopian state, right? And again, somewhere in the middle is probably where you have to find compromise, and you have to accept some trade-offs. And what I like about the model is it's an invitation to the reader to kind of think about certain topics and think about, like, where would you position yourself? And in there, what we say is that, you know, in the center, there's kind of a trade-off balance where if these arrows are rubber bands, you know, the rubber bands kind of balance it in a way where it's in the middle, where you have a society that understands that, you're gonna have to find compromise. And what I love about our system here in Switzerland is that we have a system that, you know, over time allows everyone to kind of create or influence that balance. And for the past 200 and more years, you know, that has worked quite well, right? I mean, it's actually not so bad here. And so once you recognize that a system is working, I think I would be very careful to just tear it down and replace it with something which is not defined yet. And that is one of the things that I have huge problems with some of the neo-Marxist type thought patterns where they're going back to some form of model, and actually they don't even have a model and I don't think they really think about solution. They just think about what's bad and they want to tear everything down. So I invite everyone to think along these things. Think about it with regard to something like immigration or something like even the pandemic. And like, where is, how much state, so how much vertical do you want to go? How autocratic do you want to become? And on the other hand, like, how strongly do you want economic principles to rule? And ideally, we would have some form of balance there as well, right? Where the individual is protected and weaker individuals in society would be protected too. But we can't build a system to make everyone equal, have everyone have exactly the same bank account, because then you're destroying the capital, the free market system that actually provides that tide that lifts up all ships. And you can play around with this in here, and I invite the readers to kind of do that and see if they can use it. I played around with it myself quite a bit, and actually had some discussions in the family and here at BFI, and it's quite interesting to have these discussions with that model, almost like a discussion basis, almost like a referee to say, yeah, but here's
Well, at the end of the day, it's based on the idea that you cannot have something for nothing.
correct.
There's always, there's no free lunch.
No free lunch.
And you need to think about what you're willing to give up.
Yep.
Do you think that would be an important frame of reference for any debate today, especially political questions and especially even referendums in Switzerland? Do people think like this? They understand that you cannot have whatever you want.
Well, I think it's lost. I would even just like to see that we would have for some of the initiatives or political motions, that we would have the requirement of a P&L, a profit and loss statement. Yeah. It would be really cool if politics would function a bit more on the basis of what are the benefits and what are the drawbacks. If you see what Germany, for example, is doing on the energy front, is just it's ludicrous. Germany is going down a path where it's destroying the industrial foundation. Germany has been the industrial nation of the world, for a long time. And certainly it's one of the backbones of Europe. And at this point, by putting in danger safe and reliable energy, they're basically putting in danger the whole industrial complex of Germany, which means Germany itself could really go into a very bad spot if they continue down that road. And one of the things, specifically, which I just think is ludicrous, is that they've turned off the last nuclear plant, which you can, I'm not saying nuclear has, problems, especially the current technology with the light water reactors and uranium and, the storage issues and so on. There's issues there that, obviously, but they can only be solved by moving forward, not by just turning them off. And if you look at the safety aspect, if you look at the clean aspect of nuclear, and you look at, and that's where you don't see any of these politicians in Germany. Someone like Habeck, I don't think he knows there is something like a thorium reactor. I think that guy has never even learned to read properly. I really wonder how you could have someone in government be so clueless or ideologically dogmatic. Maybe it's that. Maybe he's just a fanatic. But he's willing to risk German prosperity and what the Germans have built. And Germany has been an unbelievably productive nation. And at this point, they're going down the wrong track as well. And it's they're willing to risk all that so their profit is like, oh, we're getting rid of fossil fuels, which they're not, right? They're now turning on coal plants, but
it's not enough. Yeah.
but they're risking everything, and it's like, so have you considered the trade-offs? Have you considered what you're actually doing for this net zero goal of yours, and the climate panic and the climate situation which you think you're going to solve by using this policy? It's quite stupid in my view. But
and I think maybe it went unnoticed for about 10 years now, before the war and before the energy crisis in Europe, because people maybe didn't care that much. So, okay, net zero, whatever. We have bigger, fish to fry now. But when it started becoming a real issue and costing real money to households, people freezing in the winter in England, for example, having to choose between food on the table and heating their home, it became a central debate. Do you think maybe that's going to be a push to change the direction of thinking on this?
But that's the reason why this is very much a Western phenomenon, right? Because countries that are less prosperous, and have less money, I think, if you're concerned about getting the food on the table, if you're maybe in Bangladesh and you really have to make sure that your family is able to survive, you're not going to be concerned about where that energy or where that food comes from. And similarly here, I think people will become a bit more pragmatic if they realize what they lose if they don't have energy. Again, kind of going back to that 1 or 2 day, which can already get quite ugly, but a 2-day blackout, I think we could all survive, without too much disarray. But it would definitely wake up people to the fact that there's some real big trade-offs if you guys, just destroy the current system and think it's all bad, not thinking about what to replace with, and how to phase in a better system. You can't from today to tomorrow change the world. And it's, when you see people, in Germany, it's become almost like a public sport now where some of these activists, they glue themselves to the street.
Yeah.
And then everyone, then you have traffic jams and you have to unglue them and seeing everyone else. We actually in Zurich too, we had one instance, and where we had like 5 or so activists glue themselves to the Bürklibrück, to that bridge there next to, right in the center of Zurich. And one of the persons was a professor at the university, and it's like, I understand if a 20-year-old kid does that, but she's like 40, 45, and she's supposed to be educated. And you just when you then hear the interview, there was an interview, where someone, I think it's important to understand, why did you do this? And if you listen to her, you really have to go, she really has no clue. She's like, her worldview is one that is completely based on hearsay. And I wonder, for example, if someone like her, who's a climate activist, has ever read an IPCC report, because that I would expect from her, right? She may have read the summary, but I'm 100% sure she never read the rest of it, because if she had, she would see how complex, the IPCC reports are awesome. If you look at the back part of it, if you read some of that, it's like really scientific, interesting stuff. If you look at the political and the executive summary in the front, it's something completely different. And so, yeah, it would be good if people read more, if they really went into depth. And one of the problems today with the propaganda and the one-sided media is social media. But on the other hand, I think social media could also be the answer, because some of the talks, even things like, that podcast that has now become really popular, All In. Have you ever watched that?
Oh, yeah.
It's actually really interesting, and it's, it's different guys having an argument, and they're like, they're giving each other a hard time once in a while, but it's all peaceful banter, different opinions, hard arguments. That's great. That's what we need, right? And that's what you have to use this kind of model for, to understand. Yeah, but if we do this, if we do that, it's not that simple. It's not black and white. And that's a problem, that we have so many really very loud but very uneducated, or not, it's not even uneducated, but very opinionated people that don't understand that finding a good solution for a real problem, it's not that simple. It's not simply gluing your butt to a bridge.
I wish it was.
Yeah, if it was that easy, that would be great.